Hello, everybody. You're already showing your advanced prowess by making it into a second Zoom for the meeting. Thanks all for accommodating that. Hope that you all enjoyed kind of hearing what it's like inside another purchasing department from City of Fort Worth. Today, in this kind of remaining segment of the session, part of why we had you join this meeting is we're hoping to have a little bit more group discussion about this and this topic, and then also show you some of kind of the features that Fort Worth has been taking advantage of to support their departments in case it might be relevant to you to kind of make it a little more tactical and what you can take away from today. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing screen. I think we might still continue to see some folks joining throughout um, as we go here. Let's see if I can. Here we go. Again, if you're in this room, it's because I'm assuming you're excited to talk about how to empower end users to find compliant contracts. The structure for this kind of remaining half hour is going to be a mix of discussion and presentation. Want to start, I think a big part of our goal here is to help create more connections across the procurement network, help you all meet other people working through similar challenges. So we're going to start by asking everyone to reflect on what this has felt like in your organizations, kind of like Jesus was doing for Fort Worth at the beginning. I'll share some of how Pavilion has worked with places like Fort Worth to make that a little easier. And then we'll have some time at the end to brainstorm other solutions that you all are employing to kind of improve end user relationships or ideas you have that you're eager to see other folks, whether they've done it, or if you have ideas for ways that Pavilion could be more helpful to you. So, without further ado, I think some of the common challenges that we've heard and when some of you all submitted before the webinar when you registered was a lot around department end users maybe not getting in touch soon enough, which often led to departments not necessarily following the right or most optimal process for procuring the thing they needed. Or kind of the worst when they get all the way through the process, find a cooperative contract, have gotten the quote from the vendor, done all this work, and then come to you, but it didn't contain the basic information you needed to approve it. So you have to say no, and everybody leaves a little frustrated until you get it resolved. I'm curious to hear that's kind of the high level summary, but we want to dive in a little deeper to understand kind of how this is hitting with each of you. So I think first question that we'd love for you all to kind of share your experiences with in the chat is how do department end users first get in touch with you when they have a purchasing need? And I'm sure it varies from purchase to purchase. So I guess maybe what's like the most common way you first hear from an end user when they have a purchasing need? We got a ticketing system, a mix of emails, phone calls, or requisition, a lot of emails. Once they've already done it and now need procurement sign off. Oh, I like that. Just walk right into the office, emails, just submitting the PO for approval, ticketing system, Oracle. For those that are talking about ticketing systems, can you share like where do those live? Are those um, is that like a separate Google form or Microsoft form that you've set up? Is that a module within your ERP or e-procurement system? Um, ERP system is looking like what some folks are saying. Often only hearing when it's an emergency or sole source for sign off via email. That makes sense. Okay, great. So I think then the next question we're curious about is what are the most common policy reminders that you have to give department end users? What do you feel like you're most often repeating yourself about, particularly when it comes to using existing contracts or the purchasing process more generally? Dollar threshold requirements. Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, quote requirements. Do not sign anything. Yes. Yeah, that there's still more due diligence to be done. The certain minimum requirements for using a contract, that you have certain vendors that you need to work with. Purchasing limits or threshold limits again, signing authorities. Oh, insurance compliance. Yes, that feels definitely a common need. Yeah, when to use sealed bids versus unsealed solicitations, why you need city council approval. Yeah, quote requirements, state regulations, milestone dates. So by far the most common it seems here is purchasing thresholds and relatedly like what path they should be using based off of their purchase. And then it also sounds like a lot around quoting, like what they can and can't do independently when it comes to working with a vendor, what they need to request, what they can sign, who they need approvals from, what vendors they can work with. Federally funded purchases being different from locally funded purchases. I think we hear that a lot too. Um, okay, great. Well, I think already the theme is you're not alone if these are problems for you. The main reason you're here is around adherence to guidelines for federally funded purchases. Okay, that's really helpful feedback. And then the last question that we have for all of you right now is around kind of what are the most common reasons you have to say no to a contract that an end user wants to piggyback on? I'm imagining there might be some related answers to the previous question. For instance, maybe it does, yeah, the sourcing methodology does not meet certain requirements. I know someone mentioned too that there's more due diligence you need to do, so I feel like this is kind of digging in deeper on that. It's expired. Um, it's from a non-approved cooperative. I know that's a big issue in Texas in particular. The advertising wasn't done appropriately to your requirements. The thing they want to buy is not actually in the scope. Sure. For those that said did not follow our requirements, kind of what are some of those other requirements that um, you see most often? Certain commodities or services are not allowed to be piggybacked. They've exceeded the spending on the contract or it's expired. Okay. Scope creep, funding availability issues, sure. Advertising. Okay, great. That is super helpful. Oh yeah, advertising again, like how diligent the initial RFP was actually. Okay, this is really helpful to understand too. And so now I'll go ahead and show you kind of how we've worked with Fort Worth and others to address some of these issues. But then I'm excited to get your feedback and brainstorm together on kind of ways forward that can make this even easier for all of you. So first up, so this is kind of the high level summary of like how Pavilion has worked to do this so far. Some of you may already use some of these features. Some of you may not. So feel free to add in the chat as we go if you have comments or questions based off your experiences. But I think we know, so at the baseline, as a reminder, any contract that you find on Pavilion is going to be active, cooperative, and competitively bid by default, which based off some of the feedback on that last question, we know like even that already knocks out a fair amount of the non-compliance issues, the most common non-compliance issues that a lot of folks can see. The language was, that there actually was a competitive bidding process. The timeline remains active and it has language that allows piggybacking. And so this is a big reason why, for instance, you heard City of Fort Worth is like trained their departments to search on Pavilion for contracts versus just Googling or asking the vendor, because that they know by baseline this exists. And they've also set up pre-approved contract sources. So for those of you that have requirements around working with certain cooperatives or local agencies where you have an existing agreement, or you're just more comfortable using, you tend to know that you can accept the terms that certain agencies negotiate because they're in your same state or they're a similar entity type to you. You can set up certain contract sources to always appear first for anyone in your entity when they're searching for a contract. So they're more likely to come to you with like a contract you can actually say yes to. You may have seen this already, but I'll also show you how you can filter for different setup, like if there's certain diverse business certifications or disadvantaged business certifications that you care about. We can make sure those are on Pavilion so that you can filter to specifically see if there are any vendors that meet those certifications that have active contracts available to use. And lastly, a very new thing that maybe not everyone has seen is we now offer the ability to set up a kind of custom purchasing guide to remind users of your core purchasing policies, those threshold requirements, those quoting procedures at the moment they are searching. I think we hear a lot, you train your departments frequently, and then 6 months later, when they actually have a purchase, it feels like that training never actually happened. You're repeating yourself a lot. So this is one thing we've built and can offer for all of you to help kind of reinforce that. So I'm just going to jump into Pavilion to show you what that looks like right now. I'm logged in as if I was from the city of Fort Worth. And you can see at the top, this is already here when I'm that kind of reminders of your purchasing policy. We say, if you're logged in from the city of Fort Worth, we're going to have this banner at the top that says, if you're not sure if you can use a contract, here's where you can check. And when you click this button, it's a custom page for Fort Worth and could be custom for your entity too, kind of centralizing the different things. Purchasing thresholds was top of mind for them as well. Different things about the process, how they want their departments to use Pavilion, and exactly what they need to move forward with in a requisition. It's all here. You can format it as you desire and really centralize your information this way, as well as make sure that your departments know who to reach out to when they have questions about cooperative procurement in your agency. And then they can go ahead and resume their search. And now they've had this year, but it will remain. If I'm going to search for traffic cones, I'm going to be reminded at the top, this is still here. And now you'll also see when I'm searching, they have also set up those kind of pre-approved contract sources, like I mentioned. So we're seeing only approved sources. So I know that these are the contracts from these vendors are ones that show up first are the ones that the purchasing team knows they can move forward with. You can see there's a lot of options for this for traffic cones. I'm trying to see if I were to exhaust this, there's too many options for this one. If I had a more specific search that was pretty niche there, maybe those cadaver tables, right? If I had searched for that and there weren't options from my pre-approved sources, Pavilion will show you that and say, there aren't great matches for your search. There are some other contract sources available, but you may need additional approval to move forward. And I'll show you how to set that up in just a second, but did want to flag you may not already know this, but these additional features here too, around like filtering for vendors who we know serve Texas, as well as showing suppliers that meet diversity criteria. Like for Texas, there's the statewide Texas Hub certifications. I know for other states, you may have statewide or city-specific certifications you care about. Those can all get loaded in to make sure that you're able to filter for folks that meet the right criteria for you. And then the last piece here too is if you wanted to set up this ability to search through only approved sources for your entity, you can always come over here, clicking on your name, going to account preferences, going into contract sources down here. And then this is where their list lives, so they can check anytime, like what are the sources that are pre-approved, that they have interlocal agreements with. And then you could always add more by searching for it here. I'm not going to do that so I don't mess up the city of Fort Worth's settings. But this is a quick way that you could quickly create your own list and move it over. Yes, I'm seeing some people that are already interested in getting some of this set up in the chat. Okay, we'll keep that as we go. But I think these are some of the ways that we're increasingly moving towards setting up kind of your entity's specific policies so that it's a lot easier for you, that you basically have additional reinforcements in the tools that you're using to make sure that everyone across your entity is finding what they need. Before I want to go back to like some discussion in the group and kind of maybe invite some folks to come off of the chat and talk live. But before I do that, I just want to check, did anyone have any questions about anything that I showed? Was any either the approved sources, the filters, or the custom purchasing guide? Straightforward enough for now. Perfect. So that's also great feedback that it's resonating there. So I think that brings me, I think, back to the group here. And I'm curious, and please feel free to come off of mute in this time or type your response in the chat. But I mean, those are some tactics that, some agencies Pavilion is working with um, are using. And it sounds like others of you may soon elect to use as well. But are there other tactics that you all have used to help your departments navigate your procurement process? So we have a marketplace, so kind of like setting up some of those like punch out type catalogs where these are things that are available for them to purchase already that are compliant. Flow
Sorry,
chart.
I'm gonna come off of mute. That one, yeah, they set them all up, and it's only approved vendors from approved cooperatives. So there's no procurement. They reach the vendor directly.
Nice. And so you all set that up for your agency, sounds like.
Correct.
Nice.
And anybody in the that's an employee has access, and they can reach and negotiate with the vendor directly. No procurement involved.
Very cool. Flow charts. I've seen some pretty gnarly flow charts in my day. I'm curious, kind of what is that to help folks navigate which like procurement path to choose? I think that was Andrew Greason that said that, if you're able to elaborate.
Yeah, I'm coming off mute here. This is Andrew
Awesome.
Greason, City of Carmel. Hey, so this was basically developed from our transactional lawyer that we have at our law department. And it summarizes basically the types of purchases that you can do in Indiana that are mandated by Indiana code. And it goes from public works projects to goods to services, and then the alternative purchasing method. So emergency purchases, auctions, and whatnot. So basically, just stems from those four different choices, and then after you've developed which type it is, it then goes into dollar thresholds, and then who needs sign off, who needs approval, how does it go through the process if it's sealed or if it's unsealed, and then whether or not it involves public works and needs to be publicly unsealed, or if it can just be administered internally and then utilize, whatever procurement dashboard, because we utilize OpenGov here.
Cool.
And so we have we're developing our website right now to have our listing of open solicitations, and then it basically tracks the progress of those RFPs, RFIs, whatever, until completion and contract issuance. So
Nice. So right now, those flow charts are kind of static pages that people review or that you remind folks to take a look at.
yeah. I'm developing. Well, it's a procurement department of one.
So
So I'm trying to develop a internal intranet site on SharePoint, and the flow chart's going to be one of the staple documents for quick reference guides. I'm trying to put the perspective of, if I needed to look for something,
right.
I didn't touch this that often, where would I go? That's the perspective that I'm trying to develop and administer here. So we have 19 different departments that have their own purchasing ideas and methods, and I'm trying to wrangle all that together. So
Yeah.
it's like herding cats.
I feel like that is got to be felt. I'm sure others on this line are feeling that burn. But it sounds like you're thinking really strategically about what tools you can offer. And I feel like procurement, I feel like requires so much empathy. You all are constantly delivering such service to others that you work with and trying to figure out how are you thinking through this problem. Um, I see there's a lot of interest in, I think from Melissa Nelson, you mentioning kind of the resource page that you've created. I see you say it's internal, but I'm curious if you could just describe it a little bit more, come off mute, kind of what information do you put there? Do you find that departments are using it? How's that going?
Hi, this is Melissa Nelson from Bellingham Technical College. I send people here constantly on my out of office responses. I actually include a link to this page
Oh my God.
telling them if, they have questions, go here first. If it still hasn't been answered by the time I get back, go ahead and email me. Um, and I have everything from like our purchasing card, user guides, activity logs, links to like the login to the bank and stuff to we utilize Oracle PeopleSoft here for our community and technical colleges in the state. There's 34 of us on the same system, so it's really clunky. And they have a lot of resources too, but a lot of those resources are way too much information for, the end user who just wants to do a purchase requisition or something. So I created some how-to videos and guides for that, like how to navigate in the system for approvers, how to approve a purchase requisition, um, and then, the official rules. So I have our college's policies and procedures. I have links to state procurement of goods and services, policies, RCWs, sole source information. Um, what else do I have? Oh, I have contract pricing resources. So I have links to the different cooperatives. Pavilion is listed on there as well. State negotiated contracts. I have the search links to our state veteran-owned businesses, our OMWBE certified businesses, how to search them, and then just a few like common vendor website links, and then my contact information is up at the top.
That is amazing. And it sounds like that's like helping folks are emailing you a little bit less or self-serving a little bit more.
They tend to be. I have different departments that are really good at it. So, like facilities is really good at going and finding contracts and looking for information. I'm on listservs, so when DES, our State Department of Enterprise Services, enters into new contracts, I'll look at their newsletter and I'll forward it to say, like we just did one with that would be of interest to our diesel tech program. And so I forwarded that to him and he was like, does this mean I don't need to go get quotes? I said, yes, this means you don't have to go get quotes if you want to use this contract. And so I kind of try to help people, like you said, be a little more self-sufficient, go and get those quotes, go and look for different contracts that they can utilize. And then there's other people that, of course, are always going to need a little hand-holding.
Yeah, absolutely. Super helpful. Thanks so much for everyone sharing. I think the last question we have, which maybe is harder because it's hard to imagine but if you could wave a magic wand, we're also trying to always figure out at Pavilion, like how could we make all this work that you all are doing to help your departments navigate these processes all the easier. So I showed you kind of what we have built so far, and that's based off of feedback from some of our partners, but I think we think we could kind of go even further. And I'm curious if anybody has any ideas based off your experiences using Pavilion or the things that you've been kind of building yourself that you would love to see kind of more technologically enabled. Is there anything that Pavilion could be doing to make it easier for your departments to navigate your procurement process? Hopes and prayers. We'd love to do more than that. You have those always from us. No. Um, like I'm curious, and like Andrew, maybe to call you out again because you've already been a volunteer to speak. But like with those flow charts you were creating, if there was something that could help your departments move through that flow chart, and make the right decision by entering in different information or something like that. Do you think folks would use it? Would you use it?
I mean, potentially, yeah. I mean, if it goes into a basic, what are you looking for? What is this considered as, pro serve, goods, services, whatever it is, and then like it starts to eliminate certain specifics, and then you finally get to your end game of, oh, this type of solicitation that you need to uh, use, and here's a contract that meets those criteria. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of like going through like a decision tree process, and then it just keeps whittling away types of contracts that may or may not pertain depending on your answer, and then it just continues on until it filters out exactly what you're looking for based on your criteria.
Yeah. Would anybody else use something like that? Does that sound helpful to other folks, or do other folks have other ideas?
I think what would be a good idea is, I don't know how you guys categorize your data, but if you have state by state search queries, because every state is different with their contract usage and their allowances of what they're able to use pertaining to co-ops. If there's a way to, I guess, minimize user error in terms of selecting contracts that may or may not pertain to their specific state and their entity. I know that's a huge lift for you guys to keep abreast of all 50 states and their procurement knowledge, in their codes. But I think that'd be a really useful resource, because then you're assured that you're only picking things from Indiana or from Texas or from whatever state that is applicable to where you're looking at. That would be great, because that way you're not picking something that looks great, but then you get to the
Right.
very end, like, oh, I can't use it because of these legal terms, or this statute, or this doesn't meet our needs. So I think that'd be helpful.
Oh, I'm seeing a lot of excitement about that in the chat. Um, and I think right now the closest we get to that is like you can filter to find contracts from others in your state, or from vendors that we know can work in your state. But I think there's probably a lot further that could go, um, based off of the full complexity and compliance rules that each state kind of passes down. That's
Yeah,
helpful.
right. Yeah, because Indiana state law is pretty lax when it comes to certain types of contracts,
Yeah.
compared to, a state like Texas, which is heavily regulated and has its own strong procurement code. So yeah, I mean, I used to live and work in Texas for a public agency, so I'm very familiar with the stringencies
Okay.
of Texas procurement law. So yeah.
And very different from Indiana, it sounds like.
Yeah, very, very.
Super cool. Well, I know we only have a minute left and some folks are hopping off. If you have other ideas, I'll make sure everyone has my email because we'd love to keep talking with you about it. We're always eager to figure out how we can be more helpful to you. Um, and I also think it sounds like there may be, for some folks who are interested in getting their end users a little more up to speed on how to use Pavilion. My colleague Vanessa put this in the chat, but we'll share out about how that you can connect them with some training resources so that they understand it. And if you're interested in kind of setting up those custom features like we showed before you share it with your end users, you can also just reach out to us. I'll make sure the easiest email is to reach out to partnerships@withpavilion.com. I'm putting that in the chat. And my email is just ann@withpavilion.com. If you have any follow-up questions, I'm also happy to just go directly and chat there, but I'll get it either way. And then we have an upcoming webinar on December 10th. You'll get the follow-up on this about our new cost to procure calculator with NAEP and NCPP, a lot of acronyms. And then also, for those California folks on the line, we hope we'll see you in person at Capo in January. More to come from us in email, but thank you all so much for taking the time. Hope it was helpful. Hope you got to meet some new folks and hear some new things, what other folks are up to. And we hope you'll join us at the next one. Take care, everybody.